Okay, so it sounds like some of you guys had some pretty vivid images in your head. Okay, I could hear you talking about what you heard, what you saw, okay, what things must have really looked like. All right, that's a pretty vivid image. His mother was sitting at the table, working a crossword puzzle from the newspaper. He plopped down next to her and sighed. She looked at him inquisitively. "Can't figure out how to do my homework," he complained. "Will you help me?" His mother smiled. "I'd be delighted. Let me see." He pushed his arithmetic book in front of her, page 43. She opened the book to that page and looked at Bradley's torn, smudged paper. "Okay, first let me clear away this newspaper so we can have a nice, neat place to work. While I do that, I want you to get a clean sheet of paper." "I don't have any more paper. This is all I brought home." "There's some paper in your father's desk. Get a sharp pencil, too." He looked at her in disbelief. He wasn't allowed to touch anything on his father's desk. She nodded. Bradley felt a little scared as he walked into the extra bedroom which his father had used as an office. He opened the top drawer of the old oak desk and carefully took out a pencil and a piece of paper. He shut the drawer, looked around, then hurried back to his mother. She smiled at him. He sat down and wrote, much neater this time. Bradley Chalkers, homework, arithmetic, page 43, Red Hill School, room 12, Mrs. Ebel's class. Last seat, last row, black eye. "You have to put all that," he explained, in case it gets lost. She read the first question aloud. "What is 3/4 of 2/3? He shrugged. "Okay," she said. "This is the first thing you want to do is write the question." Hey, just like I tell you guys, you want to write it out. Okay? Write the equation, right? So you want to write it out so you see what you're doing. He still didn't know what to do. She wrote it for him, and there's a little math problem actually right in this book. Kind of interesting, we're doing times right now, and there's actually a math problem in the book. We haven't multiplied any fractions yet, but whenever you see the word of, it means you multiply, she explained. And this is true. This is very true, so pay attention to this. You might learn how to multiply fractions while I'm reading this. So of means times, he said. "Right," said his mother. "That was what the lion had said." "Now you can cancel out the 3's, said his mother. "That was what the kangaroo had said. You always cancel out 3's. And that's not always true. But neither of them noticed that Claudia was standing behind them, watching. "That's not how you're supposed to learn it," she said abruptly. Bradley turned around and glared at her. "You have to explain why you cancel them," said Claudia. "And they don't call it canceling. It's called dividing by 1. "I just know the way I learned it," said Mrs. Chalkers. "If you want, I can show you, Bradley," said Claudia. He looked at his mother and then back at Claudia, then at his mother. "Will you help me?" Bradley asked his sister. What do you think it took for Bradley to be able to ask his sister for help? I want you just to kind of think about that, please. Okay? I don't need an answer, but think about how Bradley must have had to get some courage up to ask his sister for help. Okay? You don't need, I just want you to think about it. Okay? So she said, "If you want, I can show you," Bradley said Claudia. He looked at his mother, then back at Claudia, then at his mother. "She knows the way they're teaching it now," said his mother. "Will you help me?" Bradley asked his sister. "Sure, why not? I got nothing better to do." Mrs. Chalkers stood up, and Claudia took her place. "Don't do it for him," said Bradley's mother. "Make sure he knows how to do it himself." Claudia worked patiently with Bradley for the rest of the afternoon. When he said he understood something, she made him explain it to her. That was harder. He understood it when she did it, but he had trouble when he tried to do it himself. Any of you guys ever have that experience? I definitely do. Okay, sometimes I see it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I get that, and then I sit down to do it myself, and everything just goes blank. I'm like, what? But then if I practice it, then I get it. Okay, so Bradley's having that experience right now. He sits down and tries to have trouble when he does it himself. By dinner time, they were only a little more than halfway through. Bradley wanted Claudia to help him after dinner, too. But she had her own homework to do. "You know how to do it," she told him. "You can do it yourself." "I need help," he complained. "I'll help you," said his father. "You will?" "Let's go to my office. We can work at my desk." Bradley couldn't believe it. They worked together. Bradley was surprised by how much his father knew. He made all the hard parts seem easy. Bradley was a little disappointed by how quickly they finished. He had liked working with his father. He brought his finished homework back to his room. "Oh, I get it, Bradley," said Bartholomew. "You multiply the numerators and denominators separately. But I still don't understand reducing." "It's easy," said Bradley. "Here, let me show you. Let me show you again." Chapter 29. Bradley was too excited to sleep. Mrs. Ebel will be so surprised, he thought. She'll tell the whole class. Only one person got 100%. Bradley! But there were so many things that could still go wrong. What if I lose it on the way to school, he worried. What if Jeff and his friends steal it? Twice during the night he got out of bed to make sure it was safely folded inside his arithmetic book. What if I did the wrong page? He was no longer sure whether Mrs. Ebel had said page 43 or 62. He tried to remember exactly what she said to him. He sat up in horror. She never said it was arithmetic homework. Mrs. Ebel had just said a page number. She never said what book. She could have meant history or language or any of his other books. He lay back down and trembled. His tears wet his pillow. He got out of bed early in the morning, checked to see if his homework was still there, then quickly got ready and left for school without eating breakfast. On the way, he stopped to make sure he still had his homework. As he opened his book, the paper fell onto the sidewalk right next to a puddle of water. He stared at it, horrified by what he had almost done, then quickly picked it up and placed it back in his book. He held the book tightly shut the rest of the way to school. He was one of the first ones there. He had to wait for the doors to open. He kept on the lookout for Jeff and his gang. He stood with his back to the school wall so they couldn't sneak up behind him. He saw Andy. He thought Andy had seen him too, but if he had, he didn't do anything about it. When the doors opened, he was the first one in Mrs. Ebel's class. He sat at his desk, last seat, last row, and waited. As the other kids came in, he saw them put sheets of paper on Mrs. Ebel's desk. He wondered if that was their homework. He now had a new worry. He didn't know how he was supposed to turn in his homework. Jeff entered, placed a piece of paper on the pile on top of Mrs. Ebel's desk, then came toward the back of the room. Must be his homework, thought Bradley. What else could it be? Sean, he said out loud. The girl who sat in front of Jeff turned around. Are you supposed to put your homework on Mrs. Ebel's desk? Don't tell me what to do, Bradley, Sean snapped. You worry about your homework, and I'll worry about mine, okay? She turned back around. And Bradley wasn't even telling her what to do. He was really asking what to do with his homework. But she thought he was telling her what to do. That's why she snapped that way, huh? It was almost time for school to start. What if I have to put it on her desk before the bell rings or it doesn't count? He fumbled through his book for his homework, stood up, and headed for Mrs. Ebel's desk. He became more nervous with each step he took. His mouth was dry and he had trouble breathing. He could hardly see where he was going. He felt like he was going to faint. Mrs. Ebel's desk seemed so far away it was like he was looking at it through the wrong end of a telescope. His heart pounded and his homework rattled in his hand. Listen to the description that Louis Sachar uses when he is talking about Bradley handing in his homework. Do you hear all the details in that paragraph? Mm-hmm. This is what a good writer does. A good writer, especially a realistic fiction writer, puts these kind of details in. I want you to listen to it one more time and really see this in your mind. See these details. Bradley is holding his homework and he's going to hand it in. He's nervous. Louis Sachar didn't just say Bradley was nervous when he walked to the teacher's desk. This is what Louis Sachar said. He became more nervous with each step he took. His mouth was dry and he had trouble breathing. He could hardly see where he was going. He felt like he was going to faint. Mrs. Ebel's desk seemed so far away. It was like he was looking at it through the wrong end of a telescope. His heart pounded and his homework rattled in his hand. Somehow, he made it to her desk and tried to focus on the sheets of paper the other kids had put there. It looked like arithmetic homework, page 43. But instead of feeling better, he felt worse, like he was going to explode. Do you want something, Bradley? Asked Mrs. Ebel. He looked at his homework, shaking his hand. Then he tore it in half and dropped it in the waste paper basket next to Mrs. Ebel's desk. He instantly felt better. His head cleared and his breathing returned to normal. His heart stopped pounding. He walked back to his desk, took a deep breath, exhaled, and sat down. He folded his arms on his desktop and lay his head down sideways across them. He felt sad but relieved as he gazed at the gold stars. I want you to turn and talk to your friend about why Bradley threw away his homework. Please turn and talk.